Well, welcome everyone. My name is Jake Raymer. I'm honored to be kicking off the conference as one of the first keynotes. Um, Grateful for the opportunity to share a little bit of months in healthcare and our journey in lean and kind of managing through some of the chaos and change that's occurred this last year. I think Ken Snyder said it best this morning when he shared some of us thrived and some of us survived, and I think we did a little bit of both. Through a lot of the things that have been going on this year. My role has been the Chief Transformational Officer for Months in Healthcare, helping guide them through this transformation, but have spent a decade working with the Shingo Institute and kind of helping them, one as an assessor, training assessors, but shaping and shifting, the framework and the Shingo model to help organizations help navigate through some of this chaos and change that we see. So it's a complex topic at times, to talk about transformation, and I'm not going to do justice without my whole team here. And I'll be speaking on behalf of about 10,000 people at Months in Healthcare. They're just doing a phenomenal job. Kind of give you a little bit of, my role, as a kind of a transformational officer is often put our team into optimal anxiety. I challenge our leaders, to move out of their comfort zone, to think what is possible, to help them with this change and help navigate. And who would have thought I'd had competition with the pandemic to really institute change within our organization? Usually I have to push it, but the pandemic really forced the change. When we first started back in March, everything just hit. Our leaders were talking about this Zoom thing is not going to last. I don't know how it's going to work. In 1 to 2 months, let's just get through it and then we can get back to normal. And now Zoom is kind of our language. In fact, we had to create a one-pager just on how to raise your hand and how to mute yourself. And even still today, you hear things like you're on mute. If you're sitting in this conference and you're calling in from home, 75% of you, if you look down at your feet, I guarantee you'll be in house shoes, you'll be in Crocs, or you'll be in socks. So you think about all the change that's occurred, for us, and it helps us realize that we adapt, we change as individuals. We don't fear change as much, but we fear the unknown. And that's one of the challenges, kind of going through something like this and embracing change, embracing a pandemic and coming out of it stronger. What I want to share, in the limited time I have 30 minutes to kind of go into some of the lean transformation and thoughts that we have in helping organizations go through this this process. And what I wanted to focus on was looking at lean transformation from the known side. So what have we done to really create stability in organizations? Order breeds habit, and our job when we create a plan, a lean transformational plan, is to really build in stability, build in routine, so when things like this hit, that we kind of relay back to and go, okay, at least we have the muscle to get through this pandemic or this change. But then some of our deepest learning has come from being in the midst of, this pandemic and changing on a dime. I mean, our transformational plan, as good as it was of March, of last year, it really got, a lot of things were paused, and how we move forward was kind of the learning and reflection that we discovered. So I want to talk about, how we've managed our lean transformational plan in adjusting in the unknown. One of my CEOs retiring, Tom Lemon, was one of our CEOs or is our CEO of our Otsego Hospital, Memorial Hospital, and he's retiring. I asked him, what's that one thought, that you could share with us as leaders? Been doing this, executive role for, several decades. What's a leadership message you would have for us? And he paused, he thought, and he said, my one lesson I would share with leaders as I retire is get comfortable with the uncomfortable. In essence, get ready to embrace uncertainty. That's just part of the leadership role, is that you guys start getting comfortable with the uncomfortable and the uncertainty that's coming down. And how we manage that is going to be, key and significant. So a little bit of the Munson journey, if I were to put the Munson journey on a visual, it looks something like this. We actually, Munson Healthcare, 9 hospitals, 7,500 plus employees, 1,000 physicians, hundreds of ambulatory clinics, not small, not super big, but is big enough to really appreciate and understand, this lean transformation and this journey. They started about 2016, 2017 in a phase I'd call, exploring and learning and testing. What does this lean thing mean to us? In 2018, they got very serious. It's like, let's get a plan. Let's, provide some air cover to really commit to becoming a lean organization. And I really want to, just give shout out and kudos to the leadership team. Ed Ness, his executive team that has provided air cover to really identify, key things to do in a lean transformation and have walked the talk. 2020 hit and it shaped and shifted us significantly. In fact, if I were to put words to this, our lean transformation kind of sounded like this. We started out, lean made sense. We talk about the principles, respect, lead with humility, seek perfection. I mean, these principles made sense. The lean concepts make sense. How we round, how we communicate. And at this time, life was good. It was like spring on a sunny day, walking in the park. There was hardly any resistance in understanding the power of what it means to be a lean organization. And then we had our holy crap moment, where, again, things changed on a dime. And we realized there is no way we could have survived this pandemic without some of the systems that we had stood up. But it also made us realize that that was hard. We got to get in better shape, or we need to continue to build this lean muscle. That's kind of the reflection we're having, right now as an organization, is that it was hard to get through, and that we have to continue to build this skill set, this mindset around lean. So that's really kind of what's captured, in our journey. And I can tell you there were two systems that just saved us going through this pandemic. So I'm going to place that out as kind of a seed to think about. I'll address them in just a bit, but there were two systems that really helped us survive, and not only survive, but thrive through the pandemic. So if I was, as I share, transformational plans, one thing I would say to any organization, when we're talking about, lean transformation, lean evolution, anchor your plan to something that is solid, that is tested. Our plan is anchored to the Shingo model. It has elements like align, enable, and improve. When I worked for the Shingo Prize, we spent over, several years, 3 years plus, studying organizations, 300 plus that are doing this work. That's how the Shingo model was created. It wasn't a think tank of a bunch of people in a room. It was observing the 300 plus organizations doing this work. That's why when you see the Shingo model evolve, it's because the 300 plus organizations that are using it are evolving. And I wish I could spend more time here on this and share, the depths of each one of these phases. But if I were to use the word align, enable, and improve, don't treat those as singular. They're highly connected. In fact, when we watch organizations go through this journey, it was interesting which one they gravitated to first. Every organization, including Munson Healthcare, we gravitated to improve. We had to let's test this out. Let's see if it works. But when we watch organizations go through this, they said, well, let's just try lean. Let's go improve something. About 1 to 2 years, they get into this and they go, okay, so what are we trying to get out of this lean thing? And, the front line would be looking at each other like, I don't know, just start improving, keep improving, get on a rapid improvement, do another value stream map. But 1 to 2 years, they kind of, figure this out. And the leaders looking around is like, well, we're improving, but are we improving on the right things? And the leaders kind of reflect and they go, I think we need to enable them. I mean, we need to have the skill sets, develop our people. Let's start coaching them. So then we watch this journey, go where they spend the next 1 to 2 years developing their people to improve. About 2-3 years into this, what you have is a bunch of efficient, ticked off improvers still asking, so where are we going with this? And then we found about 4 years in the journey, most organizations figured this out. And they said, you know what, if we'd have started with the line, we'd have saved a lot of grief, a lot of those questions of why we're doing this, where we're going, how we're doing it. So we start out our journey, our transformational roadmap with a line. And I'll talk more about this one in just a bit. What I would say is use the Shingo model as kind of the training wheels in your plan. You will never go wrong, especially, and you'll thank the Shingo Institute for this one, when you hit a pandemic, when you hit massive chaos and change, that you focus on how to align your organization, how to enable people, and how to improve on the right things. Make sure you capture this in a plan. It's if you want to own your transformation, you got to own the plan. And even though that plan is going to be shaped and shifted by your environment, you got to have something to start out with. It just doesn't happen by chance. It's like culture. You want to own your culture or be a victim of your culture. I'm sure in this conference, there's going to be a lot of workshops or people that get A3 thinking and have A3 conversations. I'd encourage you, connect with them, create a plan, put an A3 around your transformation. Some of the best thinkers. If you don't know, reach out to Kim Barnes or Heather Frazier. She's our VP of operations of our continuous improvement. These are individuals that just get A3. It's their second language. But have a plan as you go through this transformation. From my purview, it's been focused on the organization. Some of you might be thinking, well, I don't control the organizational transformation. Well, then step down and look at your site, your plant, your hospital, come up with a plan. If you don't own the site, go to the department. If you have a department, what's your department plan in this lean transformation? Worst case, get down to yourself. Identify your own personal A3 of what's important to you. What goal do you want to achieve? What drives your alignment? What skills do you need to develop? Where should you be improving? So you can own your own personal transformation. But this is the one first thing I'd share with anyone going down the lean journey is create a plan, anchor it in the Shingo model. These phases will be critical. They will help you through chaos and change. And one of the last things, I know there's a lot of words on here that really wasn't meant for the keynote, but I know you're going to get a hold of my slides and you may want to have some insights on, so what are some of these other phases? I want to focus on the alignment and unity one specifically, because that's what got us through this chaos and change, helped us embrace change, was having that alignment and unity. And what that really was, in this phase was really creating and establishing a simple framework, a clear and simple framework that is us. Oftentimes we miss this step. We jump into change, we jump into lean, and we start with the tools. But if you're to take a step back and just identify what is it that really is us as an organization, and what does our framework look like? For months in healthcare, this was one of the most essential pieces we had that helped us through the pandemic. It was identifying really clearly and communicating the why, the what, the where, and the how we're doing this, connecting to a meaningful purpose. And this is where we embedded the principles and the systems into the framework. The purpose of this was really to create a common language. So we're all speaking the same language, unified focus. This is where I find most organizations run into the pitfall of creating a flavor of the month or creating a tool-based approach when you don't take this step and step back and identify, what is the bigger picture, your framework of executing and deploying lean within your organization or your department or your team. One of our driving purposes, by the way, at Munson Healthcare was we had 9 hospitals. They all carried the Munson Healthcare name, but we are kind of independent as hospitals, which means they could have their own strategies, they can have their own methods. And part of our goal in lean is to create some of that common language, simplify it, and create a more centralized understanding. And so that was one of our goals, was to create more of a system at Munson Healthcare and move away from some of the silo mindsets, but having more of a collective. And this is actually a challenge because you have to balance autonomy and control, allowing people to have their voice into, this framework. But let me introduce, this is what we call our alignment framework. We spent over a year at Munson Healthcare creating this. And there's some key things to understand some of our learnings around this one. We use lean concepts, we use agile, we use change management. but we do Munson healthcare. And that was important. Our language is so important. And it keeps us from creating flavors of the month, from programs coming in. HRO, high reliability organizations, we love the concepts to it, but we do Munson healthcare. HRO helps us with our quality and our safety initiatives. We use those concepts. So this was, one of the most critical stake in the ground for us as an organization to establish is what's our, what are we trying to achieve, where we're going, what's our why, and then how are we going to do that? Interesting enough that if you look at the Shingo model, that the outer elements are really what we align to as an organization. One of my favorite quotes, and is when Sandia National Laboratories won the Shingo Prize, and they won it in the public sector. We were waiting for a public sector to win the Shingo Prize. They won. Everyone was, really curious, like, how'd you do it? How'd you pull it off in a government setting? And when they were asked that question, the ones that won the Shingo Prize, they said came up to the podium and they said, where tools lead, fools follow. And we followed for a long time, and then we learned how to not lead with tools. That quote oftentimes gets a misconception that tools are bad. Tools are not bad. We use tools all the time. Make sure that we own the tools and the tools don't own us. Question we often ask at Munson, did the A3 own us or did we own the A3? Did the board own us or did we own the board? And when we say that, what we mean is, did it help us get us closer to one of our outer elements of we improve lives? Did this move us closer to our true north goals and our metrics? Did this get us closer to one of our strategic goals? So we lead with these outer elements. The rest, the inside of how we do things, is what serves these outer elements. So this is kind of the engine behind, the Munson healthcare alignment framework. It's how we do things. And again, you can see that this is where we're anchoring back to continuous improvement, cultural enablers. This is where we embed our principles, our systems, and our tools. But this is the engine of how we do things across 9 hospitals. And again, we had to make this our own. I'd encourage you, as you're creating your frameworks and your method, use your own language. It's key in getting your people to buy in, to accept, and be part of that transformation. But you'll see how this kind of helped us go through change and the pandemic, and also how we had to change and modify our deployment of it, how we taught people around this. You'll notice that there's some sequential pieces in here. Goal set alignment. It starts with goal setting, visual management, problem solving, standard work. But we put people at the center of this, our ongoing individual and team development. Our true north is around our patients. Patients are at the center of what we achieve, but our people is at the center of the work we do every day. If I were to strip away one piece from this that would just cripple how we operate, it would be the outer element, our follow-up and accountability. It's what kind of glues all these pieces together, is how we follow up, how we communicate, how we round in there. So there's a lot more to this, in our time, from, in these next few minutes. I didn't want to go too much depth here, but it's important to have that kind of framework. I often see the Toyota production system. It's one of the most copied business systems in the world. The Toyota production system works for Toyota. We learn from the concepts and we modify those and put them in our own language, but this is our way of doing things. It was fascinating to watch, as we started to use these, elements that we spent 2 to 3 years really starting with True North. In fact, that was where a lot of our energy was around True North. And I'm going to date myself by using an example of a Rubik's Cube. It's an 80s toy. About 95% of us can get one side of the Rubik's Cube. About 3% can get more than one side. And so we found that it was more than just True North. In fact, people, they wake up in the morning, and it's not to reduce length of stay. It's not to, focus on adjusted, cost per discharge. Why do people get up every morning? And we found that True North was a starting point for us. These are the dials we have to move. But as we stood back, it's more than just True North. In fact, the leading piece of our framework and model, the stake in the ground that got us through chaos and change, was really this statement right here. It's we improve lives. This is our purpose. And what took us 1 to 2 years to get True North out there, this took us 6 to 9 months. And within 6 to 9 months, 9 hospitals, they just gravitated to it. In fact, it was their job, not the leaders, but the front lines, to identify. So what gets us up in the morning? In fact, our corporate communication led a campaign of what gets you up in the morning in 3 to 5 words. What is it that gets you excited to come to work? And with the several thousand employees and several thousand inputs on this one, they came up with we improve lives. Is why we get up every morning. And the we is the doctors, the physicians, the nurses, the front line. It's the community, it's the patients, it's their families. But this is why we get up every morning. And having that type of purpose that we can anchor to is key and critical going into any type of change, because you have to have that stability to anchor to. Now, here's where it got interesting. Now things were humming, we were good. Like I said, walk in the park and the storm hits. How we survived the storm, knowing that we had these things, we had been working on them for 2 years. What was different and how do we shape and shift? This conference is entitled Embracing Change and Sustaining Excellence. I can tell you, these are the things that allowed us to embrace change and not only sustain, but accelerate our momentum in focusing on excellence. And this was a light bulb for us. As much, as I was part of the development and creating the dimensions behind the Shingo model, they did not go away. It is still about how we align, enable, and improve. But our mindset around them kind of shaped and shifted. Our understanding of the principles behind them evolved. So the principles were constant, but enabling, it wasn't just about enabling people, it was enabling with compassion. The difference between empathy and compassion. Empathy, we feel for them. We can put ourselves in their shoes. But compassion was a step further. It was not only do we feel, but it led to the desire to help. We were improving like nobody's business. We had model lines, model areas. We were doing value stream maps. We were doing a lot of what typically you'd consider as lean, and we were humming. But it was the urgency that really stretched us and pushed us to think differently about how we were improving. So we improve with urgency, to act quickly, to adapt, being able to say no to a lot of the things that kind of forced us to say, where are the most important things to improve on? And finally, alignment and unity. And we led with this one. We had this one down, but it was also eye-opening for us that we had focused so much on alignment and identifying and communicating a shared message, but unity means that everyone's working together on that shared message. So they are synergistic, but they are still different from an organizational standpoint. So I want to share some examples. As we think about transformation organizations, we hit this chaos and change. These are the 3 things that kind of helped us. And I'm going to dabble in some of the things that really kind of stood out and how we did this. First of all, rule 1, with enabling compassion, you got to meet people where they are. This is all about people. Change is all about people. It's about individuals. And it's more than just communicating, it's connecting with them. And this is what kind of deepened our understanding around how to enable people with compassion. This was at the forefront. If I were to capture one picture, of ground zero of the pandemic, there was a lot of emotion, especially in hospitals. We felt it daily, the nurses, the physicians, the families. It's interesting how this element of compassion really helped us understand how to best enable our people. How we treat the one reveals how we regard the many. This shaped and shifted how we ask questions, how we rounded as leaders. Where before, as we rounded, we would ask questions like, talk to me about the process. What's working? What's not working? What's one thing you'd improve? But then it shifted our questions to things like, where does it hurt? What will help? What can I do? Let me repeat those 3. Where does it hurt? What will help? And what can I do? These became our rounding questions as we found the power in compassion with our people. If you were to take away one activity, it's this, and by the way, this was one of my colleagues shared this picture. This was posted on a healthcare door, not in our healthcare system, about 2 states south of us. I'm not going to share the name, but it was really interesting. It says, please take responsibility for your energy you bring into this space. Your words matter. Your behaviors matter. Our patients and our teams matter. Take a slow, deep breath and make sure your energy is in check. Our leadership team, we're constantly making this list right here. In fact, if there's one takeaway that you can do immediately, understanding change is understanding yourself and your energy level to deal with change. Take a sheet of paper, fold it in half. On one side, put what gives you energy. On the other side, what takes your energy away. Identify meetings, activities, and yes, people. You don't have to share this list. It's just for you. The reason we create these lists with our team, our leadership team, is that when you have more things that take your energy and less that gives you energy, and you're not going to avoid the things that take your energy. You can't avoid some of these meetings. You can't avoid, some of these activities. You have to do them. But if that list is bigger than what gives you energy, it is almost impossible to meet people where they are. And so having that check of yourself on that energy is key. It's critical. I want to give kudos. This is one of the most incredible continuous improvement teams I've ever worked with in 2 decades. They live, they breathe principal systems and tools. They know their role. They know that their job is to transfer that knowledge to the leaders, not to own the improvement, but for the leaders to own that. And we had a challenge. We were focusing on how do we develop, we're in the middle of developing our operating system, and having workshops, and people attend these workshops to help create A3s and to set up their visuals and to set goals. And when March hit, all that got put on pause. So how are we going to adjust how we train people, how we help them move through this? And what this team came up with was brilliant. They said, we need real-time coaching. We need to be able to have ability to pair with these leaders. And that team became one of the most invaluable groups that we had through the pandemic, to pair with leaders, to have real-time coaching, to stand up new systems we have never done before. And you can see the flow of the conversation. They would stand with those leaders and ask, what is the goal we're trying to accomplish? Can we see progress? What problem are we trying to solve? And this became a language that we used. So instead of going through the weeks and months of training, they would pair with them and have these real-time coaching conversations. Urgency forced us into this type of mindset and allowed us to stand up systems that, were so new to us, and they had to be stood up overnight. Mobile collection, testing sites, mass vaccine clinics. In fact, you would hear nurses, the chief nursing officers would be leading this. And oftentimes the language would be, we need this, the CNO would say, we need a PDCA this. And the nurse would ask, okay, so what does PDCA mean? And the CNO would respond, that means that it doesn't have to be perfect, but we got to understand the problem. These were massive systems we had to stand up within that organization. And it was, what we heard the most was, this is real lean, because we had to do it immediate. We adjusted our mindset and how we did that. This was really around real lean for the organization. I do want to, end with, 2 of our biggest systems, that got us through the pandemic. 2 of our biggest systems was our problem-solving ability and how we did daily huddles. We could not have survived without having the cadence of daily huddles and communication and a language of problem-solving. I know most of you have some type of daily huddles to get you through, every day, but I have to amplify. I mean, we are really good. We spent a couple of years focusing on, that frontline team huddle, the hospital management team. But then in the last 2 years, we said, we got to get this to the system level. And they were all for it. And so this cascading of information from the hospital leadership, we have a system call-in where all the CEOs call in, the corporate services, they're escalating key problems. And this became routine for us before the pandemic hit. And Ed Ness, my boss, the CEO of the entire system, would say there's no way we could have took the chaos and the change of the pandemic head on without this type of system in play. They will never do it any other way. These are the power of lean systems, and that we'd hoped that we'd had before we hit that chaos and change. If you don't have a way to communicate up and down, start building that out. You know, I'm gonna skip to the end because my time is short. You know, we take a poll. In fact, I do have to go back one. We have, you know, and part of our alignment meeting that we have is that we ask questions to our frontline. We do this every month, and we pull 300 of our leadership, our supervisors, and we're always trying to find, you know, what keeps you up at night. And part of that compassion is addressing these issues. So we are constantly trying to connect with that front line, with that people, to understand what's keeping us and getting us out of, you know, harm's way from this change. Here's my final take, you know, talking points, you know, what I'd love you to take away with. Establish a roadmap, align, enable, improve. It's critical. Start with creating your own language. This helps you get through that change, an anchoring point, but be prepared to shape and shift that plan. The unknown always is around the corner. Adjusting to change requires you to focus on people. It's around unity, it's around compassion, urgency. This is what kind of got us through that, this perfect storm of a pandemic. It is about that front line, real lean. It happens by involving the front line, and that changed our mindset of how we develop people on that one. So I appreciate, you know, the 30 minutes kind of going through some of these key lessons learned around our lean transformation and handling it through the unknown. I'll pause there. I know I'm out of time.